service for American Friends Service Committee has turned into. It's service with all kinds of action engaged for the people who are doing it. My experience with the American Friends Service Committee goes way back. I grew up with parents who were very active with service committee. I went with my mother during the Second World War down to Chicago, often on Saturdays, to put clothing together that had been gathered, collected, and we baled it. We put it in these great big things, pulled a lever and packed the clothing all together, and it was sent off to Europe mostly, but also to Asia. That was American Friends Service Committee. Also, my parents directed a work camp of the Service Committee held at Alney Friends School to do work in the farms, the orchards in that area, because there were no workers for the orchards. They were all off with the Second World War. And sometime later, we did a work camp, my parents did, and I was along as a 10-year-old in southeastern Missouri. We were building a bridge, and I was about 7 or something like that, and able to get down in between the forms as we built an underwater bridge, which is essentially a cement floor to a crossing across the river with the water flowing across it. An opportunity to get to know people in that area, to work with them, and it was a high schoolers work camp. Great experience for all of us. It's too bad Service Committee isn't doing exactly that kind of thing, but it changes with the seasons and with the generations and the needs that are there. So that brings us to Service Committee 100 years. Quite amazing that it's still going, still strong. And so now I'll read to you what was sent to me to say about Joyce Ajlouny. She joined the AFSC as its General Secretary in 2017. A Quaker leader who's committed to helping bring peace and justice to oppressed and vulnerable communities globally, Joyce brings to AFSC a depth of experience and international development in education and 27 years of nonprofit management. Under her leadership, AFSC is entering its second century with a bold strategic revisioning and planning initiative that will set organizational goals for the next decade, 2020 to 2030. A Palestinian American, Joyce started her career working in international development in Palestine, focusing on minority and refugee rights, gender equality, economic development, and humanitarian support. She served as a country director for Palestine and Israel with Oxfam Great Britain. She chaired the Association of International Development Agencies there and worked as a program manager at various United Nations agencies. Prior to joining AFSC, Joyce served as the director of Ramallah Friends School in Palestine for 13 years, where she led a diverse staff to transform the school academically, physically, and financially. Joyce will be available at breakfast. She'll be having breakfast with those of us who want to join her tomorrow morning in one of the 2 little rooms. I think it's room A, that's just this side of the salad bar. And that will be tomorrow morning. And I'm certainly not going to miss that opportunity. So let's hear from you, Joyce.
Thank you.
Great to have you with us.
Thank you, Tom. Thanks for the nice welcome. my time, my water, essentials, right? So it's my pleasure to be with you tonight. It's always a very gratifying time for me to be among friends. You know, I grew up in Ramallah, where we had very few friends, and so I was a very lonely Quaker in Ramallah. And so I moved to the U.S. 7 years ago, and it's been just such a joy to reconnect with my bigger Quaker family. So it's always a pleasure to be amongst friends. There is Sharon. I had lunch with Sharon. Here you are. She gave me a tip. I had lunch with her, and I told her about the story of why Billy Graham and Yellow Dress is the reason I'm here. And she's like, well, that's catchy. You should talk about that. So I'm going to take her advice and tell you why I am here, i.e. why I'm in existence. So my father, so I'm a third generation American, third generation Quaker, right? My grandfather immigrated to Michigan, and my father was born in Detroit, but then he went back to Ramallah, and long story, I won't get into it, but he then, as a teenager, came back to the U.S., and then when he was about 25, he wanted to go visit his mom in Ramallah, and so he made that trip to visit his mom, who he hadn't seen in 10 years, and then he heard that Billy Graham has a sermon in Jerusalem, and he thought, oh, I'm going to go and hear what he has to say. So he went to Jerusalem and to attend the sermon, and there across the hall was this beautiful lady with a yellow dress, and that was my future mom. And so that's why I'm here. So that's so anyhow. So as I said, as a lifelong Quaker and a person who has worked in both Quaker schools and now the American Friends Service Committee, it's always a welcomed experience to be among friends. I thought Tom did a good job explaining sort of my background, and it's some people are curious, you know, why am I American, or how come I'm both Palestinian and American, and it is because my father was born in the United States, but I lived the majority of my life in Palestine. We did come to the U.S. I came and attended college in Michigan, so Michigan is where my two brothers are. One of them is an attender of Birmingham meeting. Another one is a lazy Quaker in Ann Arbor. And I always tell him that he should be attending, but he doesn't. But I do have two brothers in Michigan and a sister in Maryland. And so all of us are here. My father passed 2 years ago, and my mom remains in Ramallah. But pretty much my whole family is in the U.S. Right now. And so I thought of telling you a little bit more about my identity, because, you know, what does it mean? I've been aware that my life choices have been rooted in my identity as a Palestinian who has lived, you know, under occupation, but also as an American, also as a Quaker, and as a woman. And so each of these shaped me in profound ways. Living in Palestine for most of my life under an oppressive military occupation and experiencing the horrific, daily, traumatic manifestations of occupation is where I derive my unwavering commitment to justice, but also where I find courage to resist and stand by those oppressed wherever they may be. Being an American allowed me to experience what democracy and freedom feels like, that we the people have the voice, like this picture right there. We have a voice that matters and that drives societal change. It also brought me closer to home, a different kind of experience, as I moved here, I experienced another form of racism, rooted in ethnic privilege, and that's something to me that was new, and I've been learning a lot about that while living in the United States. As a third generation Quaker, I've come to honor the practice of seeking inner peace, the inner light, not only in myself but externally in others. I lived knowing that I do not own the ultimate truth. I was drawn to listen to the stories of those who come from unfamiliar cultures and faiths and those who I don't agree with. Continuous revelation always with that in mind, looking for ways to refine my own truth and be willing to change my mind. And finally, as a woman, as you may expect in the Arab world, I know that what it feels like to be a female in a patriarchal structure where attempts to undermine and exclude women is very prevalent. I've experienced brutal attacks on my right to speak, to lead assertively, and to share a vision. I have persevered and stood firm, knowing I will be judged with more stringent measures. But I also learned to take ownership and be true to my gender, especially in leadership. So it is with these identities and experiences that I'm able to share with you at this annual gathering to do justice, love mercy, and walk humbly with thy God, finding our calling in disturbing times. At first, it seems like a pretty tall order that the prophet Micah is calling on us to do justice, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with thy God. I have been giving some thought to what sustains the habits that lead to justice, mercy, and humility. What inspires these character traits? How can we, as part of the religious society of friends of truth, create the conditions for more justice and mercy in our world, our meetings and worship groups, and in our communities? The answer is simple. It takes courage. And I forgot to use this, so I'm going to use it now. I talked about the living under military occupation. This was just a visual to show you what we go through every day, just to get to school or to the hospital or to work as a checkpoint entering Jerusalem. And that's we the people and the power of the people, and that's me at the TPS, which is we had a demonstration in DC where I took part to protect TPS status, which is temporary protected status for immigrants from particular countries, and I joined in that. So sort of the power of the people as an American, and that's my meeting house in Ramallah. Some of you may know it, but it stands tall with very few members left there, but nonetheless, it is a space that it means a lot to me. This is what made me who I am. From when I was a young child, going with my dad every Sunday and sitting in silence in that beautiful space. So this is the place that impacted me the most. Keep it at. We can go previous. Okay. So Maya Angelou, the great poet and activist, famously said, and I have a quote from her here, she said, "Courage is the most important of all the virtues, because without courage you can't practice any other virtue consistently. You can practice any virtue erratically, but nothing consistently without courage." And to me, that's really my motto at work. Is I think the staff they've heard me say this word a million times: courage, courage, courage. And so that's why I'm focusing on it today. As I reflect on what it is that impacted me the most from my experiences with Quakers, I realize that it is my readiness to take calculated risks against strong personal convictions, to voice my own truth with confidence, and exercise courage to do the right thing despite consequences. A key element of change, transformation, and leadership is indeed courage. At the Ramallah Friends School, at Earlham College, where my son just graduated 2 months ago, and at the American Friends Service Committee, I see a common spirit. They have a spirit of truth-seeking and risk-taking, a social conscience. I remember at the Ramallah Friends School, I insisted that we teach the diaries of Anne Frank. And boy, did the parents uproar, like, why should we teach that? You know, they don't teach, Israelis don't teach kids about, you know, our plight and our dispossession. You know, why should we teach about the Holocaust? And so I pushed to do that, because I believe that we need to really understand our histories if we're really serious about peace. But that's, you know, it takes courage to find teachers and faculty that are willing to do that courageous act. So, what makes us take risks? I encountered many courageous people when I visited with our programs around the country and around the world with AFSC. Last year, with the migrant caravan from Latin America moving up towards the US border, I visited with the migrant caravan in Mexico City in December. There's a picture, I believe, of that here. Yeah, that's me and my colleague Catherine, and the one with the hat is a young woman whose name was not relayed to me. She was mute and vulnerable and simply seeking dignity. She fled her own town in Guatemala in the hope that she could find work. In Mexico or in the United States, she couldn't talk, so she was writing down her responses to my question. She was desperate to find work and send money to her mother. She risked being subjected to violence. This is a very precarious terrain. A woman traveling on her own in what is a very dangerous place, yet she packed a small bag and joined the caravan, hoping to receive some added protection. Her courage inspired me, but also reminded me of the times I risked my life and the life of my children as I strove to secure my freedom, free of violence and oppression. The times I defied curfews and checkpoints and trying to get out because I wanted the freedom. It takes courage to do that. And so when I heard her story, I thought of myself, and I understood why she would put herself in such a precarious situation. So courage is the mental or moral strength to venture, persevere, withstand danger, fear, or difficulty. It is ignited when one chooses to act despite the fear. Nelson Mandela states, "Fear and courage are brothers and sisters, if I may add. It happens when one follows the heart, when one perseveres in spite of adversity and stands up for morality and doing the right thing." That was a quote from Nelson Mandela. So, and courage becomes habitual with time and translates into all walks of life, including work. Everybody tells me at work that I'm a risk taker, that I like, sure, they're like, the staff come to me and like, we want to go and do civil disobedience and get arrested. I'm like, go for it. And so, and they're like, what, really? I'm like, yeah. You're forgetting I'm the Palestinian American. But it's true. It has to be calculated, of course. But change does not happen without courage. And so that's something that I'm taking at heart at AFSC. So my nearly 2 years of service at the American Friends Service Committee has given me yet another opportunity to see Quaker courage in action. Founded on Haverford College's campus in 1917 as a way for young people of conscience to serve humanity without serving the military during World War I, AFSC is, like you are, committed to bold truth-telling and putting Quaker values into action to improve the lives of communities around the world, In fact, we popularized the phrase "speak truth to power" with our famous anti-militarism booklet published during the height of the Cold War. How then do we Quakers foster courage in ourselves, our communities, and our institutions? We need two things. First, we need to be vulnerable by admitting mistakes and learning how to do better, walking humbly. Indeed. And second, we need to be open to taking some bold risks and follow our leadings. Last winter, as people were seeking asylum and coming to the US-Mexico border, our government stepped up hostility towards all immigrants and potential immigrants. As an organization that works in Guatemala and El Salvador, where many people were fleeing poverty and violence at the US-Mexico border, and in many communities on immigrants' rights, we took a leadership role in calling for action at the border. People from many faiths joined us in San Diego and dozens of local events to risk arrests and make a public witness of human rights at the border. I was there. Here I am. And that's Lucy, if you know Lucy Duncan, and that's Brant with the glasses, Brant Rosen, who's our regional director for the Midwest, who was supposed to be with us today and tomorrow, but he fell ill, unfortunately, and won't be with us. But that was, both Brant and Lucy were arrested that day, along with 30 religious leaders, while we tried to cross. We didn't attempt to cross. We tried to come closer to the fence to bless the immigrants that were on the other side. But obviously we weren't allowed in, and arrests were made. So people from many faiths joined us in San Diego and dozens of local events to risk arrests and make a public witness for human rights at the border. Inspired by this, thousands contacted Congress. Our events sparked notes of affirmation and courage from people who were despondent at the situation. Thank you notes poured in. I think we received at least 500 thank you notes, which was really amazing. We saw people inspired, standing for justice in less usual places, not just the college towns and big cities, but small towns in Idaho, Wyoming, getting on local news and calling their government to create more humane action and to really hold up the rights of migrants. To me, that was the first time I really saw AFSC during my tenure take that leadership role and be that prophetic witness for others. And what I noticed is people were like looking for our messages from other faiths, the Christians, the Jews, everybody who was there, the Muslims. They were like, so what is the message? And so they were just copying our talking points, and it's like, if AFSC is saying that, it must be right. And so I sensed a real sense of trust in our voice and in our message, and I took that to heart. And as we deal with the strategic plan for the next 10 years, I'm looking at that. It's like, what our Quaker voice is really respected. Not just AFSC, but your voice as Quaker. Because in traveling around the world, visiting our programs around the world, when I meet people, they're really interested in what Quakers have to say. Quakers are trusted, and so I think we need to leverage that because of that sense of trust. So courageous truth-telling, therefore, when demonstrated, is contagious. So many people joined us in this courageous act. More recently, meetings around the country joined AFSC and several migrant rights groups to call on our government to shut down the child detention center in Homestead. That's me again. You're right, Tom. You tell me I'm in the middle of everything. That's right. Didn't mean to do that, but anyway. But this is a time just last month where we collected over 120 signatures on a petition to close Homestead, and this was our attempt to deliver them, and we were, of course, stopped. 120,000. I'm sorry. Thank you. Yes. Too many sheets. Too many sheets. Yeah, and these had so many names. They're like columns and columns of names. So it's really something. This effort is very new, with public activity only this spring and summer. And Amnesty International just joined us in this effort as well to close Hampstead. Knowing that keeping children locked up is a grave wrong and a great shame on this nation. Children belong with their families and communities and not in prison camps. So as a Quaker who believes that there's that of God in everyone, I believe it was my duty to stand for justice and mercy for migrants everywhere. Stand for the dignity and freedom of every person, and stand up for the truth that everyone, no matter where they were born, deserves a chance to live in safety and peace. So thousands of us that day marched against immigrant detention. But last week we did deliver the petition with 120,000 signatures to shut down the detention center. Many Quaker meetings across the nation supported us, amplifying our call for justice and simple humanity. And the good news is that in the past week, we have heard that the government is transferring 1,000 children out of the detention center, that Homestead, to be in homes with sponsors and relatives. We hear reports that Homestead may in fact shut down in the next year. This is a big win for these children and for our nation. But we are staying vigilant. We need to ensure that all these children find their way to safe homes. And we need to make sure that closing down this one detention center is not replaced with another. Our Homestead work is just one example of activism that walks a courageous and humble path to advance justice and mercy in our world. I'll be visiting Homestead next week as well.
Where is it?
In Florida, near Miami. So I'll be there next week to share with our staff some action that they're doing there as well. So I'm so proud to work at AFSC with so many courageous colleagues who demonstrate to me every day that we need to continue doing the radical and sometimes unpopular work. Time and time again, I have found AFSC in spaces that others choose not to go. And I've heard this with the strategic planning. We've done a lot of interviews, speaking to people about what they think about AFSC. And the one thing that really came out of these interviews is that you really go where no one else goes, and you really do what others don't dare do. And to me, that also spoke to me. That made me like, okay, this is it. I'm trying to find our comparative advantage, and I think I put my finger on it when this message kept on being repeated. So some of this work is controversial. I'm sure that not everyone in this area agrees with AFSC's take on immigrants' rights. We are not risk averse. Being a pacifist is not about avoiding conflict, but encouraging conflict directly, truthfully, humbly, with the faith that conflict can be transformed over time by truth and love. So historically, AFSC stood by its values despite the odds. Sometimes this courage creates company, but not always. There are many stories of courageous people who found themselves isolated from their communities. After the end of the First War and during the armistice, AFSC engaged in the controversial efforts. Okay, this is our Homestead. Sorry. Controversial efforts to feed malnourished and disease-stricken German children. Quaker relief work recognized that children, regardless who their parents are, German, Nazi, regardless, are often the ones who suffer the most during wars. And AFSC took a very bold move in feeding German kids after the war. 102 years ago, a gifted professor of Bible studies at Greek and Haverford College, was concerned that a military draft could ensnare members of peace churches. Henry Cadbury called the meeting that soon became the AFSC, but that was not without controversy. For speaking out against the war, and he was speaking out very boldly, Henry created controversy at Haverford. While the college campus was the training grounds for the first AFSC volunteers who headed to Europe to care for those displaced by the war, Henry Cadbury had to resign for sharing his truth. So yes, sometimes it's controversial, sometimes we're not popular. In 1963, despite opposition of many, AFSC published Martin Luther King's letter from the Birmingham City Jail. In that letter, King was responding to white clergy who were asking him to moderate his activism, to slow down the protests of civil rights. We later demonstrated that we were on the right side of history with this action by publishing his letter. A year later, MLK received the Nobel Peace Prize, and I'm proud to say that AFSC, as a Nobel laureates ourselves, we nominated Martin Luther King for the Nobel Peace Prize, which he received. For those who don't know, AFSC, on behalf of Quakers around the world, together with British Quakers, received the Nobel Peace Prize in 1947. When I joined AFSC, I asked, like, where is that prize? I want to see it. And no one knew, and then we found out that it's in a vault in some security box in a bank, and I'm like, get it out. We need to celebrate it. And so I got it, and then they told me it wasn't insured. So I was carrying it in my bag, put it under my pillow because I had it for like 3 or 4 days. But I wanted to share it. And I remember we had an international executive committee meeting in Philadelphia, and during break I said to everybody, I have a surprise for you. And I went and got it, and we had to wear a glove to carry it. And my school is like this big. That's all this is. This big. And and it has a little edge, and on the edge you see the American Friends Service Committee engraved in 1947. And when I got it out, I could not believe the impact it had on the staff and on the committee members. It really was something, because I saw so many tears, and no one, it just brought back that sense of pride. And then I took it to the next day. We had a retreat, a leadership team retreat, and I said to them, how do we get this again? And so that's the challenge. And so, but anyway, but that is to remind you that we received this on all your behalf. It was on behalf of all Quakers, because of the bold work, because of the courageous work. These are sort of but a few examples. And today, AFSC continues to take risks in the name of courage and mercy. Here are some examples that I want to share with you. And perhaps before I do that, just for those who are wondering, in 2018, AFSC worked in 17 countries around the world and in 35 US cities. So that's our global reach. We're a little short of 400 staff, so we're quite a large organization. These are our key areas where we work: peace building, ending discrimination, racism, defending immigrant rights, economic justice, and ending mass incarceration. As I said, these are being revisited in our strategic plan at present to see, where do we place priorities. And I think one thing, before I get to some of the examples, that after I did a lot of traveling for the first year and a half, visiting the programs. And I'm kind of the outsider coming in and looking at the work. And I try to sort of get out of it, like, what is it that is different about AFSC? What is it that I'm taking out? And I mentioned one of them is we are where others people don't go, and we do what other people don't dare do. But I also found that I was really touched that we are also guided by those most impacted. Like when I visited our program in Michigan with Natalie, and I looked at the staff, and I saw that our staff, amongst them are formerly incarcerated people. And I visited our office in Tucson, Arizona, same there. I visited our New York office, same there. And in North Carolina, we have an immigrant rights program, and the people who are leading it are all not only immigrants, but undocumented immigrants. In California, we have a group of young undocumented immigrants. They have a project called 67 Sueños, and they are the leaders of this program that we support. And so we, that says a lot about decolonizing our work, that we don't go and tell communities this is how it's done. We are guided by them. And one thing, as someone who has experienced international development for so many years, one thing that I really also took to heart is our international work. When I visited our offices in Africa, in Zimbabwe, and in Kenya, I looked around and I did not find one non-African on the staff. All our staff, whether it's the regional director or the country rep, all of them are from Africa. And to me, that's unprecedented. I have not seen that in other organizations. And so, to me, that said a lot. The fact that when we go to a community, we don't do what others do. They do hit and run. They go, they have money, they want to spend it. They go to a community, they give them the money, and then they leave, and that's it. That's not how AFSC does its work. We do this long-term accompaniment. And then I think what I found also powerful is that we do the grassroots work, but also we do the community level work, and we also do the policy advocacy work. And so there's at all levels, whether we are challenging state legislation on prison reform, or we are in Washington D.C. Pushing for particular legislation. That's we're doing it on all three levels, and that makes it very powerful, because when you push for a particular legislation, you need some legitimacy. Like, who are you? How do you know? And so for us to say that we're drawing evidence, we know what we're talking about because we are in the communities, we are with them, we are amongst them, gives us a lot of legitimacy. And then the quiet diplomacy and humility, something that I found also in our work, that it's, you don't hear it a lot from me because I'm not very humble about AFSC, admittedly, but in our staff, when I go, I mean, I've attended conferences, I've attended seminars that we put together, and nowhere is even an AFSC emblem. And then I asked them why. They said because it's not about us, it's really about them. And so there's a lot of that I'm seeing around the organization, a lot of humility. Working with youth, allies, and volunteers, and courageous work. This is just to quickly remind myself to tell you that we do have an office in Washington, D.C., which is the Office of Public Policy and Advocacy. We work very closely with FCNL, and we're very proud of that relationship. And so that's there. The thing is, people get confused. They think that we're the same. But FCNL really has its main focus is legislation. For us, it's more the education and the advocacy rather than pushing particular legislation. So it is a bit different charges there. And then we have CUNO, which is our Quaker UN office in New York. That's under the umbrella of AFSC. It has a peace building portfolio. It brings member states from the United Nations with civil society and pushes the agenda of peace building in a very provocative way, I think. This is two examples of what I consider internationally some of our courageous work. The first picture is in Myanmar. And to me, this is the White Rose for Peace initiative that we supported. I visited Myanmar about 1.5 years ago, and I was really moved. As you know, the tensions between Buddhists and Muslims is very much acute, and the Rohingyas, the Muslims, have fled to Bangladesh because of the persecution, and there are refugees there. What I saw that we were supporting is initiatives that the Buddhists, young Buddhists, were taking up. They were bringing together Muslims of different Muslim faiths with the Buddhists together to see how they can best support humanitarian work in Myanmar targeting the Muslims. To me, that was an eye-opener, because I saw that this was dangerous work. I mean, when I went and met these youth, the Rohingyas and the Buddhists coming together to work together, it's very secretive work. I mean, I was taken into alleys and up the stairs and down and to go to this meeting, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like, but that's sort of the courageous work that we do, is because we believe in bringing people together. North Korea, a lot of people don't know that we're in North Korea. We've been there since the 80s, doing peace building work through engagement. That's our staff with the North Koreans, with farmers. We have a livelihoods program in North Korea that the aim of it is not just the livelihoods, but it's building relationships, humanizing North Koreans, while our government tends to dehumanize them, but also to build the case for engaging with North Koreans, at least for humanitarian reasons. And we have our staff who are working in DC also to build a case for humanitarian engagement in North Korea. And we had a big win when our dear president, actually in his agreement with the North Korean leader, he did mention the need for humanitarian assistance, especially the bringing back the remains of U.S. Soldiers, but also family reunifications. And so we're trying to push at least engagement at that level, and that's gaining a lot of momentum. So that's examples of some of the courageous work that we do. This is a picture of our economic activism work. This is close to home because this is an issue that we work on the BDS, the boycott, divestment, and sanctions work. Quakers have had a long history of supporting economic activism, including boycotts to advance movements for social justice. In the 19th century, Quaker activists such as Lucretia Coffin Mott spearheaded the free produce movement to undermine the market for goods produced by enslaved people and to promote the buying and selling of goods produced by free labor, a form of economic boycott. More recently, AFSC supported the boycott and the divestment campaigns to support the rights of Black Americans, farm workers, the imprisoned, and blacks in apartheid South Africa. Today, attempts to criminalize supporters for the nonviolent boycott, divestment, and sanction movement in support of justice and freedom of Palestine have become a sad reality. Unfortunately, this movement has become controversial only because the Israel lobby wants us all to believe that opposing Israel's oppressive action is an anti-Semitic act, and pushing the narrative that conflates these two very distinct notions. The BDS movement does not target Jews or Judaism, but rather the human rights abuses perpetuated by the Israeli government against Palestinians and the various states that enable this, or the companies that profit from it. So AFSC encourages the divestment from industries that are complicit in the profit from military occupation, any occupation, and oppressive systems such as building illegal settlements and walls. As a result, we made it with honor on the list of 6 banned organizations by Israel. So they banned AFSC because they don't like this work. And I said, that's a badge of honor. It means we're doing something right.
Good job.
Yes. And so this is Dalit Baum. She's an Israeli. She's our staff. And she leads this work. Her office is in Oakland, California. And this is a website. It's called Investigate. She recently expanded to not only look at companies that profit from occupation, but also prisons and borders. And so anyone who is an investor, an individual or a school or an organization can go to our Investigate website, put in your set of investments and see if any of them are complicit in benefiting and in profiting from these oppressive systems. And if so, then you can make a decision to divest. And so that is the tool that we have put together to help those who want to divest. Looking at the time, how are we doing?
Good.
Good? Okay. So we know with this work that we are again on the right side of history, and we take risks. Yeah, we lose supporters. Some people tell us we're anti-Semites for doing this. They do. They go that far. They called AFSC anti-Semite for employing me. How dare they employ a Palestinian American? You know, they must be anti-Semite. And we're losing funding. Some people, you know, don't want to give us money because of this work. And we face extraordinary scrutiny because of this issue. But as I said, on so many numerous occasions in our history, we have stood our ground and we took the courageous step to stand on the right side of history. So, and we see how these issues of justice intertwine. Just last week, the president of this nation called on 4 congresswomen of color, go back to where they came from, right? A clearly racist call. The taunting of Representative Ilhan Omar of Minnesota, in particular, has been racist, and the moment at a Trump campaign rally in which a crowd chanted, "Send her back," was a chilling moment. Some of the president's supporters claim that Congresswoman Omar is critical of Israel, and that means she is an anti-Semite. But by some twisted logic, they think that justifies their racist behavior. As a Quaker, as someone who loves mercy and tries to be just, I cannot sit by while our government is spreading Islamophobia, racism, and sexism. As a Palestinian American who has experienced the effects of Israel's dehumanizing occupation firsthand, and if you have 3 more hours, I can tell you all about that, I cannot stand to see criticism of the military occupation as an equivalent to anti-Semitism. We need to be welcoming of criticism of militarism. We need to be welcoming of people of all faiths, or none. And we need to call out any in our communities who amplify messages that make it seem like Muslims, people of color, women, refugees are less valuable community members. As Quakers, we need not to be bystanders. When injustice and bullying is going on in our towns, in our schools, on social media conversations, our nation and our neighbors need to be allies to those who face oppression. We need now, as much as we were when we were at the forefronts of the abolitionist movement. The gaps between who we hope to aspire to be and the truth of where we are and how we are is the place where transformation can occur. But it can't happen if we cling so tightly to our idea of ourselves that we are unwilling to take the risks of experimentation, vulnerability, and faith to bridge that gap and work for transformed institutions and communities. One consequence of inaction is that we don't learn from trying. Prayer, thinking, imagining can only take us so far, and we need the information from experience in order to really know what might work. And in our broken world, our work is needed now. So before I conclude, forgive me for going on the limb and allow me to share a personal message as well. I started this talk to say that I'm very glad to be here. I feel at home among Quakers. The unfortunate news is that many Quaker institutions and meetings will not welcome me. That's the truth. For the mere fact that I'm of Palestinian origin. We have seen this starkly played out when Friends Central School in Philadelphia, alarmingly disinvited our distinguished peace activist and scholar and Quaker, Palestinian American, Saadat Shan, because of pressures from parents in an attempt to silence his voice. He teaches at Swarthmore Peace and Global Studies. He's a Quaker. So they invited him and then disinvited him because parents at the school said, oh, no, he's an anti-Semite. So any Palestinian, by just being Palestinian, is an anti-Semite. I too have received similar messages from other Quaker institutions. I did. Even AFSC as a whole has been excluded from some schools because of similar pressures. These are Quaker institutions. These are compelling misfortunes. Quaker institutions have a choice to put principles before pressures, to engage rather than to create barriers. I'm very happy to be welcomed here. We cannot take the back seat on the justice issues of our time and still claim that we are living up to our Quaker values. With so many millions suffering from oppression and poverty in our world, the need for mercy today is acute. We need the humility to live in service of our conscience while following the lead of those most affected by oppression, so we are truly talking and walking with God. And we need the courage to try, the humility to learn, and the fortitude to keep going. We need to follow truth most when it's not convenient, and that's not comfortable. So I think I will be remiss if I end this talk. I think Lucy would be very upset with me if she knows that I didn't tell you how to engage with AFSC. So I also have here, just very quick, because you are in the Midwest, very quickly, this was just last month. There was a conference in Michigan from 13 different states. People came together to address the issue of perpetual punishment in prisons. They brought the voices of the incarcerated from Michigan prisons to the forum. Long-term imprisonment is a real issue, and so this was a convening that we did that took a national. It was in Michigan, but it was a national effort just last month. Another thing that last week, or I can't remember, 2 weeks ago, Moms Against Child Detention. That's something we did in Des Moines as well. 50 mothers took action in July. They staged 2 sit-ins with their children at Senator Johnny Ernest's office, demanding that she take action to address the forced separation and detention of children along the Mexico-US border. But that's just an example. I'm just giving you like tidbits. Like every day there's something going on at AFSC, something like that. And so that's just to give you a taste of some of that work. This is in Chicago. There was a changing the narrative on police and spending. They lost that battle, but I think it's okay. The No Cop Academy they voted against the effort, but we brought together, we were leading this effort, we were the lead supporter of this effort, 100 local grassroots organizations to stop them from building an $85 million police and fire training facility in Chicago. And so this effort was huge to stop that, but unfortunately, a few months ago, they voted to actually proceed. So it wasn't a win per se in terms of changing that, but it was a win for getting people together and empowering them to actually feel that they should continue. And that was last week in Chicago, calling to end the blockade attacks in Gaza. There were many, what are these, kayaks? They held up a list of the names of the over 1,200 Palestinians that were killed in 1 month in 2014, and they called to the end of the blockade in Gaza. They called it the Free Gaza Flotilla, which brought light to the occupation and siege in Gaza just last week in Chicago. So very quickly, so there was all of these actions just within the last few months. So vision for the future, as I said, AFSC is in the middle of doing a strategic plan. We're really excited. We're turning the century, so this is an opportunity to revision what is AFSC, and we did send yearly meetings a survey, and some of you may have participated in a questionnaire as well, for us to get input from Quakers around the country and around the world, in fact, about where is AFSC today, where should it go, where is our added value, and we received a wonderful set of responses that we are taking into consideration. And this is what, I'll just keep it here. This is what Lucy would want me to talk to you about. So to engage with AFSC, I believe there are flyers on this and on our table. So yeah, please do grab one because it has all the links. But you could learn and connect, you can host an event, and you can get involved. So we have AFSC's weekend reading. I love that. You receive it every Saturday morning, and it has all sorts of interesting material from AFSC to read. So that's every Saturday. You can sign up for that. You can read posts at Acting in Faith. Follow us on social media. We're all over the place. We have a good social media team. From Facebook to Twitter to Instagram, we're there. The testimonies booklet is excellent. Study AFSC's Denormalizing Witness for Social Justice curriculum. Yeah. Whiteness, sorry, I'm not seeing right. Okay. And then host an event, show a film, to educate folks about an issue, invite an AFSC staff member to present at your meeting, church, or school, especially if you have a program around you. Watch and learn from webinars together. Learn to accompany those most impacted by justice as a group. And then get involved. Become a meeting church liaison and share about AFSC within your community. Learn 5 ways to work on a variety of issues. Lucy put that together. It's excellent. Start a Quaker Social Change Ministry group. This is an excellent resource. If you go to that site for the Social Change Ministry, it's a webinar and there's training on how to really do social change in a respectful way. Join the Quaker Palestine Israel Network, QPIN, also fascinating group of people that do excellent work. Nominate an organization for the Nobel Peace Prize. We call for nominations every year because we get to nominate as Nobel laureates. And participate in an AFSC workshop and other events at FGC. Invite friends to consider giving $10 a month to AFSC. And so this is how you can engage, and this is, we're always looking for monthly donors, and so the donations are also, of course, very much welcome. And so there's a whole wealth on our website of information that would help you figure it out and see whatever path is a good fit for you. We would really like you to be part of the AFSC community. And for those of you who have been linked to AFSC, we created something new this year. It's the AFSC Alumni Network. So as a former educator, I had to sort of put that in because what I've noticed, as in any school or college, I've encountered so many people who are like, AFSC, work camps, that changed my life, was so impactful in my life. I'm like, wow, I'm feeling like I'm back in school. And because of that, we did create the AFSC Alumni Network. We have a Facebook page, and we have a staff member who does amazing work and events in different parts of the country. We just hired a new head of our advancement office, and he wants to do more visitations with our donors to take them to our different programs, similar to the work camp, but not actually work camp, but more of an education on the issues that we're dealing with. So we're going to be piloting some of that. So we will be inviting some of our supporters to these visits to our different programs. So there will be more opportunities for that engagement. So finally, just to say that I have seen the strides that Quakers can make when we are all allied for justice, and I really do look forward to seeing what we can all do together. And thank you again for inviting me, and it's my pleasure to be with you, and hope we can stay in touch. Thank you.